chicken. It's the Raggy Dolls.
Raggy Dolls.
Raggy Dolls.
Raggy Dolls.
Dolls like you and me. Raggy Dolls.
Raggy Dolls.
Raggy Dolls.
Raggy Dolls.
Made him perfectly. So if you got a bump on your nose or lumps on your toes, do not despair. Be like the Raggy Dolls and say I just don't care. 'Cause Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls.
Raggy Dolls
Raggy
are
Dolls.
happy just to be Raggy Dolls, Raggy Dolls, dolls like you and me.
Something was wrong in Pumpernickle's field. The Raggy Dolls stopped and stared. They were on their way to the treehouse when they suddenly noticed there was no sign of Pumpernickle, the scarecrow.
That's odd,
Said Dotty.
only last week he was standing right here, complaining about the crows.
She looked about for him. Maybe Farmer Brown has moved him to another part of the field, suggested Back to Front. Climb up on my shoulders and have a look. Dotty climbed up and looked across the field in every direction, but Pumpernickle was nowhere to be seen.
Perhaps he's fallen down,
Said Lucy.
there was a terrible wind last night. Good thinking,
Said Dotty.
let's search for him. Come on, spread out.
The Raggy Dolls searched between the rows of tall sweet corn plants, calling out as they went.
Pumpernickle, where are you?
Called Princess.
Hello?
Called Dotty. Suddenly, Sad Sack gave a yell. Ooh!
Whatever is it?
Said Lucy, all of a dither. It's Pumpernickle, stammered Hi-Fi. He's fallen down.
Sacre bleu,
Said Claude.
I hope he has not hurt himself.
Pumpernickle lay on his back, staring at the sky.
Pumpernickle,
Said Dotty.
are you all right? You gave us a bit of a scare.
Pumpernickle tried to point, but he could not lift his arm.
He's trying to tell us something.
Said Dotty.
Pumpernickle,
Said Princess gently.
do tell us what the matter is.
Suddenly, everyone jumped. Lucy shrieked and threw her arms up so hard they both came off. Claude quickly found them for her. Pumpernickle groaned and found his voice at last.
I can't stand them things, he muttered. Modern contraptions. They get on me nerves. It'll go off again soon. And then again. And again.
The Raggy Dolls listened as Pumpernickle explained how Farmer Brown had put a new bird scarer in the field. It was called a gas gun. You set a timer, and then puffs of gas made very loud bangs. It got rid of the birds, but not for long. They soon came back to peck at the corn. We could turn it off, said Back to Front. No problem. Pumpernickle sighed.
That wouldn't do,
He said.
Farmer Brown would just come and turn it on again. No, it's no use. He just doesn't need me anymore. I'm redundant. That's what I am.
Oh dear.
The Raggy Dolls felt sad. It was very bad news. Pumpernickle was their friend, and it was awful to see him so downhearted. To make matters worse, a cheeky crow landed on a plant just above their heads and began to peck at the corn.
Shoo,
Said Pumpernickle feebly. The crow kept on pecking. Lucy got really cross. She stood up and yelled, "Shoo!" The crow took no notice.
I said shoo.
This time, Lucy flapped her arms so hard they flew off again, but so did the crow, squawking in terror. "Lucy," said Back to Front with a grin, "you've given me an idea."
Well, what is it?
Demanded Dotty, helping Lucy with her arms. "First things first," said Back to Front. "You help Pumpernickle to stand up, while I go and turn off the gas gun." Puzzled, the Raggy Dolls heaved and got the Scarecrow back up on his pole. Back to Front told them all his plan.
it might work,
Said Pumpernickle.
Yep, I think it might just work.
"Good thinking, Back to Front," said Dotty. In no time at all, the Raggy Dolls were back at the toy factory. No one was about. Lucy, Princess and Dotty went into the storeroom and started looking for scraps of black cloth. Meanwhile, the others were rummaging about in the tool shed. "We'll need a couple of hinges, some wire or string, and some round hooks," said Back to Front. They soon found everything they needed. "Right," said Back to Front. We'd better get back to Pumpernickle before Farmer Brown finds out the gas gun is turned off. Sadsack, you go and see if the others need any help.
Right-ho,
said Sadsack. As he made his way to the storeroom, Sadsack thought how clever Back to Front was to have so many good ideas. He wished he could have good ideas, but it was no use. He wasn't good at anything.
Back to Front wants to know if you need anything,
said Sadsack, peering round the storeroom door.
Only some stuffing.
Said Dotty.
We finished the sewing.
Dotty held up some black material sewn in the shape of a crow.
I saw some in the tool shed,
said Sadsack.
I'll get it for you.
Meanwhile, Pumpernickle stood with his arms outstretched with a piece of string attached to each wrist. Claude held one string and Hi-Fi held the other. Right, said Back to Front. Ready to test? May we? Said Claude.
Ready,
said Hi-Fi. Fingers crossed then, said Back to Front. 1, 2, 3, go! Hi-Fi and Claude pulled the strings and Pumpernickle's arms flapped up and down. Immediately the crows took to the air, really scared. Pumpernickle chuckled with glee.
Oh boy, that showed 'em.
Just then the others arrived, carrying stuffed crows.
Here we are, Back to Front,
said Dotty.
What do you think?
They're great, said Back to Front. Now for part 2 of my plan. The Raggy Dolls fixed the false crows to the gas gun. Now cover your ears and hide while I turn the bangs back on, said Back to Front. The Raggy Dolls hid in the corn and waited. Bang! Went the bird scarer. It did look very silly with the stuffed crows sitting on it. Farmer Brown was taking a walk around the farm. He stood on a hill in the next field and was amazed to see Pumpernickle flapping his arms and scaring crows. My goodness, he exclaimed. That old scarecrow's arms must have blown loose in the wind last night. Curious to know how well the gas gun was doing, Farmer Brown took his binoculars and, to his horror, he saw 6 crows sitting on it just as it went off bang.
It won't be long now,
said Pumpernickle.
He's coming this way.
The Raggy Dolls quickly removed the dummy crows and hid behind the corn plants. Claude and Hi-Fi couldn't resist giving Pumpernickle one more flap of his arms just before Farmer Brown arrived. The Raggy Dolls watched as he took the gas gun away.
Well, that's the end of that,
said Pumpernickle with relief.
Raggy Dolls, I don't know how to thank you. I've got my old job back.
It was a pleasure, said Dotty. But it was all Back to Front's idea.
Yeah, but everyone helped, said Back to Front. No problem.
Why don't we have a party?
Said Sadsack.
Good thinking, said Dotty. But what sort of party can you have in a field? I mean, you have picnics in a field.
Dotty stopped. She could see Sadsack was looking disappointed.
I know what kind of party we can have,
said Pumpernickle with a wink.
What do you mean?
Said Sadsack.
Well, continued Pumpernickle, we've had nothing but birds all day, so why don't we have a bird day party?
Everyone giggled and burst out laughing, except Sadsack.
That's a terrible joke,
he said. But secretly, he was really pleased to see Pumpernickle his old, cheerful self again.
Raggy Dolls are happy just to be Raggy Dolls, dolls like you and me.
It was Saturday morning, and Mr. Grimes was in the canteen making a cup of coffee for his sister, Ethel. Mr. Grimes was not pleased. Ethel had brought along his nephews, Oz and Boz, the terrible twins. Sadsack, who was feeling a bit peckish and hoping to find a sticky bun, peeped in through the window.
I'm taking the boys up to Stony Brook Park, said Ethel, to see the wild animals.
Sadsack listened in amazement. What wild animals? He thought.
Oh, yes,
said Mr. Grimes.
I've heard about that. Lord Stonybrook's new money-making venture, Safari Park, isn't it?
That's right, said Ethel. Why don't you come too?
Mr. Grimes was horrified. The last thing he wanted to do was to spend a day with his terrible nephews.
No, thanks, he spluttered. I've got too much paperwork to get through.
Sadsack forgot about Sticky Buns. He couldn't wait to tell the others. Wow, said Back to Front. I wonder what sort of wild animals his lordship's got up there.
Oh, do you think he's got lions and tigers?
Asked Lucy nervously.
What if they escape?
Don't worry, said Dotty. I'm sure everything is being done properly.
It sounds very exciting,
said Princess. The Raggy Dolls agreed and decided to investigate straight away. It was a long walk to Stony Broke Hall, and Sadsack was beginning to wish he'd never heard of safari parks. He was hot and thirsty. As they made their way through the dark wood, the Raggy Dolls could hear strange animal noises. This is like being in the jungle, thought Sadsack. He began to daydream. He could see himself by a campfire deep in the jungle, finding a lizard in the teapot. He could imagine himself in a sun helmet, driving a jeep across the hot, dusty plains of Africa, being chased by a rhinoceros.
Sadsack!
He could hear Dotty calling him.
Sadsack! Oh, come along, Sadsack. You're dawdling again.
I'm coming, he sighed, glad he wasn't really in the jungle. Meanwhile, Ethel and the terrible twins were sitting in their car by the entrance gate to the new safari park. A man took their tickets.
Now remember, keep your doors and windows closed at all times. Enjoy your visit.
We will,
said Ethel.
won't we, boys?
The boys nodded.
Can I have an hamburger?
Asked Boz.
Me too,
Yelled Oz.
Not now. Let's see some animals first. But I'm hungry. Me too.
Move along, please. There's another car behind.
Ethel began to get flustered.
Shush, boys. Which way do we go?
She asked.
Just follow the signs and keep all doors and windows closed.
Said the man. By now, the Raggy Dolls had reached the old walls of Stony Broke Park. They could hear monkeys chattering and lions roaring, but they could not see them.
Let's climb a tree,
Suggested Hi-Fi.
Good thinking,
Said Dotty. In no time at all, the Raggy Dolls climbed a tall tree and were edging along a big branch that overhung the safari park. But it was still no good. The tree was so thick with leaves, they couldn't see a thing. Sadsack began to fidget. Let's go home, he moaned. This branch is really uncomfortable.
Keep still,
hissed Dotty.
I can hear something.
The Raggy Dolls listened. Sure enough, they could hear something munching something very close by.
Oh, whatever is it?
Whimpered Lucy. There was a snap, and suddenly the end of the branch was bitten off. The Raggy Dolls found themselves face to face with a giraffe. With his eyes closed, the giraffe calmly munched a great big mouthful of leaves and swallowed them with a loud gulp. Then he opened his eyes and was moderately surprised to see the Raggy Dolls. Oh, hello, said the giraffe. And who might you be? How do you do, said Dotty politely. We are the Raggy Dolls. The giraffe sniffed. Dolls, eh? He turned his head and eyed them suspiciously. Are you sure you're not monkeys?
Well, really,
exclaimed Dotty.
Sacre bleu,
Protested Claude.
this is an outrage.
My mistake. No offence, said the giraffe. It's just that monkeys are usually up in trees and usually up to mischief.
Well, I can assure you we are not up to mischief, Mr. Giraffe,
said Princess.
That's right,
Added Lucy.
we're not going around damaging trees.
Ah, well, yes, good point. I admit you've got a good point there, said the giraffe. But I am a wild animal, you know. The Raggy Dolls listened as the giraffe explained how bored he got waiting for the wardens to bring him another bag of hay. He was meant to eat trees after all. Surely that was why he had such a long neck. Just then, they all heard a tractor coming. I'd better be going, said the giraffe. It's the wardens. The tractor was pulling a trailer loaded with hay. It stopped right under the tree. The driver had a walkie-talkie radio, and the Raggy Dolls could hear the voice of Lord Stonybroke.
Bill, you better get over to the monkey compound as soon as you can. Some silly clots have opened a car window.
I bet it's the terrible twins, said Back to Front.
Let's find out, said Dotty. Come on, Raggy Dolls to the rescue. Follow me.
And to everyone's surprise, Dotty jumped out of the tree and onto the wagon load of hay. The others quickly followed. The last thing the Raggy Dolls had expected was a guided tour of the safari park, but that's just what they got. On its way to the place where the monkeys were, the tractor passed by elephants, camels, lions and tigers, zebras and antelopes. The Raggy Dolls couldn't believe their eyes. The terrible twins couldn't believe theirs either. Naughty monkeys were climbing all over their father's car. They had pulled at the windscreen wipers and all the shiny bits, and Ethel had got so cross she'd opened a window to give them a piece of her mind. But as soon as she popped out her head, they snatched her best hat. They had pulled it to pieces by the time the Raggy Dolls arrived on the scene.
What a shame,
said Lucy, as the warden shooed the monkeys away.
My favourite hat, moaned Ethel. And goodness knows what your poor father's going to say when he sees what those little beasts have done to his wipers and trim.
The twins said nothing. They knew how much their father took care of his car, always cleaning and polishing it. Just then, Lord Stonybroke came up. He was holding the remains of Ethel's hat.
I'm most frightfully sorry about your hat, madam. And of course the car has sustained some superficial damage.
The Raggy Dolls listened as Lord Stonybroke promised that the car would be fixed as good as new while Ethel and the boys had a cup of tea.
What a gentleman,
said Ethel after he'd gone.
Such gallantry. Can I have an hamburger now, Mum?
Asked Boz.
Me too,
said Oz.
Oh, said Ethel. I don't know which is worse, you two or the monkeys. Come on, I suppose I'd better feed you.
On the long walk home, Sad Sack thought long and hard about wild animals eating trees, monkeys and mischief, lions and elephants, lords and gallantry. But it made his brain hurt, and he decided he'd rather have a sticky bun.
It's not much of a life when you're just a pretty face. Just to be whoever you are is no disgrace. Look around and you will find people of every kind, like the Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
dolls like you and me. Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
Raggy Dolls,
made him perfectly. So if you're not at ease with your knobbly knees and your fingers are all thumbs, stand on your two left feet.